Welcome, Mr. Peter Jones.
Hello. Hi. So yes, I'm Peter Jones. I run the Lustre engineering team at Intel, but I'm here presenting more in my capacity as one of the leads of the OpenSFS Lustre working group, giving an update about all the activities with the community releases of Lustre today. So the OpenSFS Lustre working group has existed in various incarnations since the Lustre team left Oracle in early 2011, and it basically serves as a forum for the different organizations who are involved in Lustre development to exchange ideas and collaborate for those releases. So we do have this wiki page. All the minutes are kept of our regular meetings. The meetings at the moment are not a very convenient time for those in Japan, but certainly you can still keep up to date with the minutes of the meetings, and if there are any questions, or you can certainly put them forward on the mailing list, and we'd be happy to engage with you. And if there is strong demand, we'd obviously be willing to consider scheduling meetings at a more convenient time. One of the things that we regularly do as part of the duties of the Lustre Working Group is to do the annual Lustre survey through OpenSFS. I think we've been doing this 6 or 7 years now, and so just to say, if any of you do complete that, thank you very much. It's very useful, and if you've seen the requests on the Lustre mailing list as they come out and have decided not to, just to reassure you that these are, it's very quick to complete the survey. You don't have to enter any personal identifiable information, so there's no risk at all that you're going to get, signed up into any marketing emails or anything as a result. But it's just, we use this kind of data to make decisions about releases. So, on the link here, there is more detailed analysis of the full survey, but I just pulled out for the purpose of this talk this particular data because I find this the most interesting. So this is survey was conducted in March, so it was prior to the 2.10 release coming out, and this graph shows the blue is the data from the 2016 survey and the red from the 2017 survey. So you can just see the trends over the course of the calendar year to see how things were changing. So no great surprise that the 2.5 release still the most commonly used release in production. It's been widely adopted, that release, by most of the major vendors in the Lustre space. Plus there are a number of maintenance releases for it, so it's proven to be a very popular release. You can see, still there's some of the older releases, going strong in production, but gradually as systems go out of service, that's starting to wind down. But the thing that I'm most pleased to see is the very strong adoption of the more recent releases. I think this is a testimony to the strides we've made in recent years with Lustre quality, that people are willing to, in production, use the more cutting-edge releases. So, speaking of cutting-edge releases, so in July we released the 2.10 release, and this would have been a release that would have been of great interest already just because of some interesting content. But earlier this year, Intel did make some announcements about changing its strategy with Lustre, and part of that was that instead of having Intel-branded Lustre releases, Intel will be focusing on purely the community releases of Lustre and putting all of our engineering efforts into those. And so as a result, and part of that would be that there would be a series of maintenance releases, based, the first one of which would be on this 2.10 release. So there was definitely, strong anticipation about this release ahead of time, and so just to go on a bit more here to talk about this LTS concept. So this is not an unusual, that software projects do have this concept of a long-term support release, and so that there's clear differentiation between people who know they're using the latest release to get the cutting-edge features, and they know they're amongst the first to be using those, and those who want something that's a bit more proven to use in a production environment. So we did do something similar to this back in the WAM Cloud era, but we made a couple of changes to how we structured it based on our experience then. So back then what we did was we had a designated maintenance release stream, and we announced our schedule ahead of time, and we said, right, for the next 6 quarters we're going to do maintenance releases on 2, for example. But what we found then was that we got diminishing returns from the value for the effort we were putting into those releases as time went on. And because as we fixed the most important bugs on a given release, there wasn't really that much interesting content in each new release, but still it consumed engineering resources. So what we're planning to do now is we've signaled that we're going to do these releases on the 2.10 release, but the exact schedule, we'll tell you when the next one is, based on what we know, but we won't, we'll do the releases when it's warranted to do them. So if there's a new release of Red Hat that we want to offer support for, we'll do a release. If there's some important bugs come to light, we'll do a release, but we're not necessarily telling you in 18 months' time there'll be this certain release after this release number. So, and the benefit of that will be that it'll give us a bit more flexibility to do other releases and other cohorts. So for example, at the moment, when the 2.11 release comes out, we could potentially do a maintenance release on 2.11.1 release if people are using that release and there's demands warranted. And the other thing that we learnt was that we're announcing that we won't change the LTS release that we're focusing on until at least into 2019. So we're having at least 18 months from the time of release that we will keep 2.10 as the LTS release. And the reason we're doing that is because we did, at the time of the 2.4 release, we designated that as a maintenance release stream ahead of time, and that was before we knew all the content of the release. And it turned out that the HSM feature missed that release and was in the subsequent 2.5 release. And we had a lot of interest for us to switch to make 2.5 the maintenance release stream. So we went ahead and did that, but then there was some people who were frustrated that they had moved forward with plans for 2.4, believing that there was a long shelf life for that, and then found that the focus had switched to 2.5. So I think now we're being quite clear in what we're doing. We're not sure just yet when it will make sense to switch to another release, but we're committing that it at least won't be any sooner than 18 months. So onto the content of 2.10. So one of the major features for this release was progressive file layouts. So this was a collaboration between Intel and Oak Ridge National Labs. So this allows to have files adapt as their size increases to be striped more appropriately. And so this takes the decisions about appropriate striping out of the hands of the end users. So it makes for simplifies things from an administrative point of view. And this is also interesting foundational work. There's certainly work planned for future releases which will build on this. Another major feature is multi-rail LNAC. So this was a collaboration between Intel, and initially it was SGI, and then as SGI was acquired by HPE, the work had completed there. And so this allows using multiple network interfaces and aggregating to get the combined performance there. As I said, there's quite a lot of content in 2.10, so other things to pick out in particular. So project quotas was development done by DDN. So that took, it was a very lengthy effort that involved working with the upstream EXT4 community to get the necessary changes to be made to filters there to be able to build on that in Lustre. And other interesting work, so ZFS snapshots, that's work that was initially done for the Intel Enterprise Edition release, and that was the upstreaming of that work. So that allows you to take, using underlying ZFS capability for snapshots, allow you to take that Lustre version of that. Also, there was a great deal of work improvements done, making efficiencies in the Lustre stack, how it interacted with ZFS to make that more efficient in the metadata performance. For Intel's on the path fabric, there was changes made to make that more, the performance higher and also more consistent. There had been previously some variability in results. And going on to contributions to this release, so you can see there's quite a number of organizations involved in this release. So these are all organizations who are contributing directly to Lustre projects. We do, as a part of the effort to get Lustre into the upstream Linux client, there is, we do get changes coming in from organizations who are not even using Lustre, but those are all aggregated under this other category. That's, they'll push the changes into Linux directly, and then the people who are keeping, working on the upstream client will port that into Lustre to keep the two code bases as in sync as possible. So this graph on the left, these are basically two views of the same data. This is a purely quantitative view on things. So this is the straight number of commits that were, and this is the lines of code changed. And of course, this doesn't consider the complexity of what was being worked on, but gives you a sense of who's involved. And similarly, this is a graph of the reviews by organization. So it's an important part of our quality practice to have engineers who are familiar with the area of code carefully look at the proposed changes and make suggestions for improvement. And the numbers involved are much higher, obviously, than the number of changes that finally land, because this there can be multiple iterations before we settle upon the agreed upon final version of everything change. So looking, how 2.10 shapes up compared to previous releases, this is the data here for 2.10. So you can see the number of commits is very consistent, fairly similar to the number of 2.9, the previous release before that, and the amounts of lines of code change is quite similar to 2.5 release. And the other thing to note as well, these are, engineers who've had changes accepted to a given release. So the number of engineers actually working on the project would be higher than these, but some engineers are working on development that will take, take longer than a release cycle to complete. And you can certainly see, if you compare to where we were 10 years ago, where we were working on 1.8 and such like, things have changed. We definitely greatly increased the number of developers and very much diversified the organizations involved in these releases. So as for the 2.10 maintenance releases, just about a month ago we put out our first maintenance release on 2.10, that's 2.10.1. And so again, the driver here, this was quite quickly after the initial 2.10 release. And the driver here was mostly to add support for Red Hat 7.4. So, but also it just so happened that a number of other things that we just missed out on 2.10 also were available to be included. So one of those was support for ZFS 07, the ZFS 07 release. So 2.10.0 shipped with still a 0.65 based release, and the 07 is quite a jump for those using ZFS. It has a lot of performance improvements, and it also has important features like multi-production. And also another thing that we got finally ironed out was support for MoFed 4X as well. That had been something that there had been some big changes in the way MoFed was delivered in early in the new year, and that caused us some problems that we had. We've not been able to get stable results running until we've made some changes to adapt those, and that went into this release. And we also have been, having less releases to contend with. We've also been looking at expanding the selection of the Linux distributions we support. So we added Ubuntu 16.04 and Red Hat 6.9 client support as well to this release. And we are planning to do a 2.10.2 release before the end of the year, and there's some other things that minor enhancements and things that do have some, may well be eligible either in that release or subsequent release. So beyond that, the 2.11 release is the major release in development at the moment. So we have slightly extended the feature freeze here to the end of this month, and the reason is that we're particularly keen to include these larger features that are still in development. So data on NDT is very, very close to landing. I wasn't quite hoping to be able to say it was landed by the time I spoke today, but unfortunately, it still may be by the end of the week it's landed. It's just doing final testing from the date before landing. So we've changed our development practice recently to actually develop in topic branches. So essentially the work is segregated from Lustre, and so when there is very large structural changes going on to Lustre, we keep that separated until it's completely tested in its entirety and reviewed in its entirety and considered to be completely okay to land. So this is because we, again, learned from experience that we had found in the past where we had big changes going in that, like for example, D&E, the scaling of metadata servers, that had actually spanned multiple releases before that went in because it was continually not quite ready, and it created quite a bit of confusion of people, seeing work that was there and not realizing that it wasn't quite ready because maybe they didn't have the full release notes or whatever. So data on NDT, like I say, should in the coming days go in, and then we've got the first level, the first phase of file level redundancy, which is built on the changes going on to data on NDT. So it's queued up behind, and again, these topic branches are open, and if you go to the Lustre Git page, you can see those and even test the work out ahead of time. But they should be on Lustre certainly in the coming weeks anyway. So this is definitely the last time that this version of the roadmap will be shown. This is the version that's on Lustre.org today, but there is actually a meeting of the Lustre Working Group today, North American time, which is will be just signing off on the new version that will be published, ahead of supercomputing, and that version will, show, ahead into 2019 with a 2.13 release as well. One thing I've not generally spoken about before in the context of community releases is IML. So IML is a GUI that you can use for the management and monitoring of Lustre file systems. Previously this had been a proprietary part of Intel's Enterprise Edition offering, and with the changes in approach to Lustre with that, this has been open source. And so just about a week ago, that was announced as being generally available. There have been preview versions available over the summer for people to try out, but it's now it's now considered ready for production use. And so anyone who's running those proprietary versions can upgrade to this new open source version. They're not obliged to. They can still still get their support in those older versions, but that is an option. And but it's also available for other community people who are interested in doing that. And going forward, so now we've got the initial release out. It's much easier to put out subsequent releases, and we've got we know we have some plans for some very large-scale developments. So some of our next phase of development project is going to be looking at scalability options. We also are quite excited about Z, the ZFS event daemon that is in 0.7 as well, and that gives some interesting options that we're looking into. And a Russian organization that I got talking to at LAD were telling us about how they're looking at adding localization to IML. And so their focus is to try and have Russian messages available, but of course once that infrastructure is complete, then it would be fairly simple to add other languages like Japanese or any other language people are interested in. And then finally, whenever I talk, I always give a plug for documentation, just to encourage people. I know not everyone has the time or inclination to get familiar with Lustre codebase and contribute in that regard, but if anyone who's able to use the software is using documentation at some point, and if you ever come across either an omission or an error in the documentation, if you could please open a ticket in the documentation project, and then it means that we could look to get that fixed so somebody else doesn't have the same inconvenience that you do. And also, another thing with our change at Intel with our change in our strategy is that a lot of materials that had been previously being just kept for purposes of people who were partnering with for the enterprise edition deployments, we have been converting those into a community format and supplementing those with all the growing body of material on Lustre.org. So there's some interesting content there to check out. So just to recap, so Lustre 2.10.1 is GA, and we're planning to do a 2.10.2 before the end of the year. Feature freeze is coming up for 2.11, and that will have some interesting features, and I should have probably elaborated there, but the data on MTT in particular is a feature that's intended to be help with small file I/O performance. IML 4.0 is GA as well, and we're looking for input from the community from other content that we could include, or other priorities to include in the 4.1 release. And there's no shortage of options for anyone who would like to contribute to either. Okay, so again, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them now or break.
ご質問のある方いらっしゃいますか? Do you have any questions?
I'm Yuichi from Weekend AICS. So my question is about how much the equipment from the interconnect vendors. So the Lustre power system has many components, including interconnects, and maybe interconnects might have a very big role in the high performance I/O. In this context, I'd like to know how much the contribution of FS activity from interconnect vendors. Is it very active, or are there some so to say cross relationship with interconnect vendors?
So you mean
technical issues or something like that?
Do you mean vendors like Knox or?
So yeah, I mean that the so whether I'm not quite sure about the internal design of the Lustre file system. I'm sorry for that. But I'm a user of the file system, and sometimes I have some issues whether the problem is coming from the Lustre file system or interconnects. In that context, I like to every time I ask the file system vendors, but it's very difficult to say which part is the problem source.
Right.
Yeah. In that context, I like to know the activity in the open community from the internet vendors with some active collaboration or something like that.
So, I mean, definitely, I'm talking here from my position working at Intel. I mean, definitely we talk regularly with the development team on the path team, and we do have contacts at Mellanox, which is probably a large portion of our user base use Mellanox. But you're quite right. It definitely is difficult from an end user's point of view. You see an error come up, or things are slower than you expect, and it's definitely being able to identify where the problem is definitely a challenge. So I mean, I think that's definitely one of the challenges in support, and organizations you work with to actually quickly make that determination is a challenge. That doesn't really necessarily map to so it's more through a support arena is our interaction. It's not like the kind of contributions I was talking there is about people working on new capabilities for the file system or bug fixes in the file system.
Or
right?
extract some more advanced features from the technology. Might be the more beneficial for the
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else?
ありがとうございました。もう一方前お願いいたします。
You showed this very nice graph about the adoption of the new releases.
Yes.
In terms of, I believe, vertical skill, some percentage or something like that.
Yes.
Is there, what are the actual numbers of roughly, like how many sites have adopted, maybe 9 or something like that? Was the last one? I'm curious.
So, I mean, the exact numbers are on that. There is a detailed analysis which has the exact numbers on. So the scale is just percentage of respondents, right? To equalize it, right? Because it just varies year to year how many have actually answered the survey. So it's not necessarily, it's only the people who've actually completed the survey who's shown there.
Would you be willing to just give an estimate of the number of users of 2 nines? Is it a few dozen, a few thousand?
Well, I think like the number of Lustres worldwide is probably thousands, right? So it's going to be, I think it's going to be 100.
Very clear, thank you.
他にご質問のある方いらっしゃいますか？ありがとうございました。ピーター・ジョーンズ様、ありがとうございました。